Well, Casey, first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show. I know, like everybody, you're probably very busy, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you. And I appreciate you inviting me to be on your show
Y-
and you taking time out of your day as well.
Yeah, of course, it's my pleasure. So this primarily my channel is all about like bodybuilding, training, fitness, nutrition, and I just wanted to, I guess, just start off like where do you train out of? Like, you don't have to get like too specific, obviously, but what state are you located in?
So I live in Connecticut and I train at Montanari Brothers Powerhouse Gym, which is kind of
Okay.
like I consider it like this sister or brother gym of Bev Francis in Long Island.
Yeah, yeah. That's why when I heard the name Powerhouse, I'm like, okay, I'm familiar with Powerhouse. So there you go. Okay. So did you just start off training there, or like did you move from somewhere else?
It's a great question. So I'm actually from the West Coast.
Mhm.
I'm from Arizona originally, but I moved from Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm in the military and
Mhm.
had lived in Utah for 8 years and just moved to Connecticut. And Powerhouse is a huge builder gym, and that was the atmosphere I wanted to be in. So
Mhm.
got the membership and like with like-minded people. So it's great.
Yeah. You need that, right? Like you need to be somewhere where people have like the same goals as you. It kind of motivates you to continue moving forward, even sometimes some days where you might not want to, you know?
It's that, and it's just the struggle. So like when you get deeper in prep, you have
Hmm.
other people that have either gone through that, same thing and can relate, give you tips and pointers on how to push through. Um, and bodybuilding encompasses a huge age range. So there's people that may have experienced something similar and can give you good advice while you're deep in the trenches of prep and so depleted that your brain's not functioning right. And you're just like, thank you. Um,
Yeah, I could see how that would be beneficial for sure. You mentioned Utah. I was just kind of curious, like, what did you think about Utah? The reason before you go on, the reason I ask is so like I have work that I'm involved with, and a lot of the people that I work with are based out of Utah. And so you'll get like what you'll get is, at least what I've noticed, is split views. Like you'll get somebody who just loves Utah and can't get enough of it, and then other people who just can't stand it and want to leave. Like, what did you think of living there?
it depends on what aspect of life that you're referring to. The active part I love in
Hmm.
Utah. There's so much to do. Like there's snowboarding, there's hiking, so many outdoor activities. It's great. And bodybuilding is becoming more prevalent out in Utah. There's way more underground gyms that are becoming big. Shane Hughley is one of the top coaches for bikini pros and other pros actually as well. And he's based out of Utah. I actually was coached by him for a while.
Okay.
Um, the food scene's becoming bigger if you're into trying new food and culture. So that's also pretty neat. As for like people, that was kind of one of the reasons why I moved out of Utah as well. That's a whole nother topic for probably another day.
Sure,
But
sure. No, I understand. Yeah, well, that was a good way of phrasing it. People, that's one of those things that's such a variable, whether you connect like with the people in your area or not, but it's interesting to know that there's like so much to do there, like from an active standpoint. So, especially and bodybuilding apparently, like you said, is coming up. Did you start training or competing in bodybuilding there, or was this something that you've like always done since you were young?
So I actually started competing the year before COVID was when I first started
Mm,
bodybuilding, and I was with Shane Hughley, and I was supposed to compete the year of COVID out in Salt Lake City, and then COVID happened, and that blew off my first season. My first competition was actually the Wasatch Warrior Show in Salt Lake City, known for the famous donut wall, which has led on to my post-show tradition of the donut. Um, thank you, Wasatch Warrior. Um, but that show is a pro am show. It's always, I think it's like the first pro show of the season. So it's something good to kick everything off. And
mhm.
I don't know, it just kind of sparked my passion for fitness. Now, I've always been active though. Like I did cheerleading for 7 years. I ran track. I used to race BMX when I was younger, played soccer. So I've always been active, and this is just like another outlet as
Mhm.
well.
Did you so like all those other things that you did, did you just kind of like outgrow them and then you just wanted something else to compete in? And because a lot of times like that's what I hear from people like as they get older, they kind of outgrow certain sports. And they just want something that they can just be competitive in and just continue that competitive drive, right? And so like they turn to bodybuilding as one of those things that they can do. Like you said, bodybuilding has a variety of different ages. So what was it for you?
What initially sparked me to do bodybuilding, because bodybuilding was never something on my forefront, was I was dating a guy, and I was known in high school for having like a bubble butt. But this guy that I dated for a while, he was like, "You don't have a butt." And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to create this new goal of mine, which is to up the double take to a triple take. So, like, I worked hard and I was always training glutes and legs. And finally, people started asking me if I did bodybuilding. I was like, what is, no, I don't do bodybuilding. But I started looking into it and I was like, oh, okay, like, this is the physique I want to get. So I hired a coach. And then since I've been doing it, I've realized that this is totally me, in the sense that, like track, right? Like it's a
Mhm.
self sport. You have a team usually because you hire a coach and they have other athletes as well, but it's a
Mhm.
self driven sport. And it's a way that you can challenge yourself, not just mentally, but physically, emotionally. Like bodybuilding encompasses every single facet of your life. And I don't think people, when they get into bodybuilding, that they realize that, like, this isn't just like, let me look aesthetically pleasing.
Mhm.
This challenge is everything. And once you, like, your first year, you're just like taken aback. And I don't think anybody can prepare someone um into the sport.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's so like I think you're right about how people don't really understand it because like you said, I think most people do think it's just like so you can look good and it's like it's a very like one dimensional thing that they think bodybuilding is. But in reality, it encompasses like all these different variables of your life. If you're doing bodybuilding just in one dimension, then you're probably not going to be a very good bodybuilder, to say the least, right? It's like all the people that are really good, they live and breathe it, right? And so it
Right.
makes sense because every sport is kind of like that, right? I mean, there might be some outliers there, but if you want to be good at something, you have to like kind of devote your like really your entire life to it in a sense. So yeah, like you, I come from sports that were individualized. Like I did a lot of wrestling, like a lot of combat sports where it's basically just you, and you like you
Mhm.
said, you have a team, but it's not. But when you're competing, you're by yourself. So like that's what kind of drew me to bodybuilding as well, as because it's kind of all not in a negative way, but it's all about you. Like whether you succeed or fail, it's like it all kind of you know pivots on you. So in your desire and your drive. So I've always thought of it that way.
Absolutely. I was trying to think of, like, just now, if there's anything else that's kind of like a solo, like, driven aspect. Because I know every time I've done a season, I've always like loaded my plate with so many things.
Mm,
Like, I'm also a student, so somehow I always end up taking two, three. My first season, I did 5 college classes on top of bodybuilding. I'm also in the military. I
mm,
work a full time job. I'm just like, how do I do it?
yeah. Are you a very organized person? Like do you just separate things and do you have lists? Like how do you get through those kind of like difficult fully fully I don't even know how to say like
Everything's
busy
time consuming.
times. Yeah.
Everything's very time consuming. So I'm not active duty in the military, so I'm in the guard. So that's
Mhm.
one thing that kind of doesn't encompass a lot of time. Um, it kind of depends on where I'm at, like in my duty though, because if
Mhm.
I'm having to do my annual training, that's 2 weeks I have to go away. And when I did my first show, when I was 8 weeks out, I had to do duty, and I was in prep, living out of a hotel room in a microwave. And that was very fun.
How
Uh,
does that even like how does that work? Like how did you do that? Because do you have so I assume when you say like your 2 weeks of training, is it like cardio intensive? Is it like is there a lot of like physical, effort there? Because I'm assuming when you're in prep, you're also like lowering your calories, you're kind of, trying to get leaner. Was that like really, really difficult?
Um, so when I'm in training, like for the military, my job, so I'm in the Air Force, my job's a weapons director. So essentially what I'm doing for the military is I'm coordinating airstrikes and ground strikes, calling in close air support. So it's not super like body intensive.
I see. Okay.
However, it's more like mental intensive, and you have to have a lot of attention while you're in duty. And when we're doing these exercises for my particular job, I'm pulling 12, 16-hour days. We have to go to like mission planning, talk to a lot of people. You have to know a lot of things. Everything's classified. So what I did is I'm very much a forward thinker. When I know that something's coming up, I'm already thinking ahead. So like when with nationals in December, earlier this month or last
Mm.
month.
Yeah, last month. Yeah, now we're in 2023 now. Yeah.
Yes, but barely. So it was about a month ago, like about 2 months or about a month and a half before nationals, I was already thinking,
Mhm.
what do I need to pack or prepare for the show? Because not only was I going to nationals, I was also going on another trip back home to Arizona to visit my family. So
Mm.
anytime something like this happens, I'm okay. What do I need? Right. So I'm thinking supplements. I made like little pill packs. But when I was on in my training, I was like, food wise, what do I need as well? Because I'm living out of a microwave in a hotel. They're likely not going to have my food. So I coordinated with my coach, and I lived off of cream of rice, protein powder instead of egg whites, tuna packets, rice cakes, things that are typically accessible or allowed in a prep. And then
Yeah.
for the duty day, I was waking up, if I had to report at 6, I was waking up at 3, getting my way to the gym that was on the base, doing my cardio, then going to the duty day. Then after the duty day, I was going to go train. And then I was still in school on top of that. So after the duty day and training, I was going to my hotel room, doing my school assignments, and then repeat. So it was a
That
long, long day.
yeah, that is intense. Like it's hard to describe. Like most people don't have to deal with any of that, like getting ready for their shows. That's sometimes you see people and they're complaining about something. Oh, and then you kind of look at them and you're like, I mean, from your point of view, it's like that's nothing. Like you literally did like, 10 major things while you were on prep. That's wild. But I mean, you've got through it. I know that one of your posts, as I was looking through, mentioned the nationals and mentioned your prep, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you said it was a very like there were some stressful situations during the prep. Was that what you were referring to, or was there other things that were going on that made the prep stressful?
This season, the stress was a lot different, in the sense I'm in a new area. Like I haven't lived in Connecticut even a year yet. So I moved out
Mhm.
here, for my birthday last year, which is in March. Um, I was living with, I was renting like someone's basement, and my roommate's mom tried putting her hands on me because I was trying
Oh
to talk to
Lord.
her son, and this huge thing like blew up, and I was like, I need to move out of here. And he like one day, I was already planning on moving out, and he's like, you need to move out within 30 days. And this was a month before nationals. I was like, oh my gosh. So that was like my latest stress before like nationals. So I had to abruptly move. So I'm staying with a friend right now, but I had the stress of a breakup. I had finals, school stress. I had military stress. I had moving stress. And I wasn't sleeping. This prep was so bad. I was waking up like every 90 minutes. And then I couldn't go back to sleep. So I shopped on Amazon. It was a great time.
Yeah, that sounds like horrific. I mean, that's terrible, especially the beginning, the way you started that off with with your roommate's mom, you said, putting her hands on you, trying to at least. That's, I mean, I don't think you'll get too many stories like that, like in middle of prep, like people getting into fights with you, especially somebody's mom.
I'm a very nice person, I promise. It's a long kind of convoluted story, but to make it short, like my roommate at the time like owned a vodka company and he was going off to Greece. His parents were remodeling their house and they needed to use our kitchen or whatever. Ended up being that they needed to use more of the house. He didn't communicate. He's a very poor communicator. And so I was upset. I got home from shopping and then I was trying to talk to him to resolve issues. And then his mom was like trying to talk on his behalf. I was like, no, this is issues like not between me and you. It's between me and your son. And then
Yeah.
she tries to like put her hands on me, like on my shoulders. I was like, whoa, like
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
touch me. You don't have permission. She's like, well, you're mad. I'm like, and you think that gives you the right to touch me?
That's
No.
that's wild. Yeah, and so like you have to move, and then you're dealing with all these other things. You say you didn't sleep. Like I've had conversations with people about sleeping and how important sleep is, especially. There was talk with this Olympia, this recent one, where some people were saying that the reason that they didn't look as good was because they didn't sleep. And sleep a lot of times will place water in like the right places, and if you don't sleep it can like wreak havoc on your physique. So one, like, why weren't you sleeping, do you think? And then like two, how did that affect your prep, your physique, with regard to the nationals?
I started not sleeping well after I got COVID. So I got COVID probably like mid-October.
Mm,
And after COVID, I think is when a lot of my issues arose.
mm,
Like I'm still having issues even post show, and I'm going to the doctor tomorrow to try to get some answers. But after COVID, like I wasn't sleeping well. I was even more irritable. Apparently, like COVID just brings out anything that
mhm.
you were possibly dealing with before onto like a different scale and just like amplifies everything.
Yeah.
So if you have COVID or got COVID during prep, best of luck, honestly. But it was so bad. I was trying everything to go to sleep. I started taking melatonin. Every time I woke up in the middle of the night, I was taking more melatonin. And it just wasn't working for me. And then like starting to deplete on water. So I'm going to bed thirsty and then taking melatonin. Like it was honestly like the worst.
Yeah.
The season was pretty bad for me in that regard.
Well, it's interesting because, like, in prep, you're literally doing everything opposite of what you should be doing to get better from COVID. So it's like you're supposed to hydrate, you're supposed to rest, you're supposed to like not move, and then
Mhm.
you literally have to do everything that's opposite of that. Like if you're going to be, in prep. So I guess you decide to go ahead and push yourself and go through that process. Um, is Do you think like when I say how do you think it affected your physique? I mean, obviously negatively. Is there anything like specific that you can think that not sleeping caused? Like, did you like have a hard time losing body fat, putting on, muscle definition, anything like in particular, or just overall?
Um, I can tell you before I had COVID, my physique was really on par. There was a local show out here that I had actually considered competing in.
Mm,
Before I'd gotten COVID, my coach had even said I was so hard, like I was ready to step on stage, but that wasn't the show that I wanted to do as like my precursor to nationals. After COVID, I feel like my body wasn't responding as well. I had put on like I gained 10 pounds because of COVID and I was still following the plan. Like I did nothing different, didn't deviate. And then I started having lower abdomen, like dissension, which I've Googled many times that's like a symptom of COVID. And it could also be like a long term COVID symptom as well. And I just kept fighting it the entire rest of the season. So for the last like 2.5 months, and it's still ongoing.
that's unreal. I mean, I understand what you're dealing with as far as like overall consequences of COVID. I personally didn't like, I've had COVID a couple of times, personally did not have any like real major effects, at least none that I know of right now. But my mom had it and she had some issues with like vertigo prior. It wasn't terrible. Afterwards, she like had to take leave of absence from work because it took it, like you said, to another level. So like her little vertigo issues now became where she couldn't like even function, you know.
Mhm.
So it would, yeah, so I completely understand like where you're coming from. That's rough. So, you know, with everything going on, how did and I know, but just for the people that are answering, how did nationals go for you?
Nationals. Okay, so obviously anybody that goes to nationals, like their goal is to go pro, right? Like
Mhm.
you don't go to nationals and not be like, I'm going to go pro. Like that's your goal if you're going to nationals. So that was my goal. And then I quit like a week before nationals. I quit. And when I redecided to do nationals, I knew at that point, like, there was no shot I was going to win. So I had to change my mentality. And I think like the classes I took this semester or that semester, like really helped me. I took a philosophy class, which really helped
Mhm.
my headspace. So I said, okay, like I've trained all year for this. Like I'm going to make the best of it. Like I just don't want to get last. So for the
Mhm.
fact that not only did I eat at Thanksgiving, so I went off plan and then like I quit a week before a show. And like the night that I quit, like I had some cheesecake and ice cream and like some brownies. I didn't go too hard, just had like a little bit. But it was still off plan. And then to still pull everything together for nationals, like a week out, like getting top 10, I think is phenomenal. Like I was center of second call outs. So I was just right there before first call outs. And so I couldn't have asked for anything more. Given the situation, everything that I went through this year, ninth out of 25 girls, I think is something a lot of people would fight for. And that was really like my second show ever. So
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think you have a lot to be happy with, right? Like, so, but before we go into what I was going to say about that, you quit. Like, what made you like going through all this, dealing with all this, and being so close? What made you decide? Okay, were you just fed up, and was it more of a decision of emotion, or like how did that come about?
I think anybody can attest to, and if you've done bodybuilding as well, you can like you would know like when you're like depleted. And I would say that this prep wasn't like I had it, my coach would say I had it easy. Like the most cardio I ever got up to was like 80 minutes
Mhm.
of cardio, and I had a lot more food than I had earlier in the season. So it's not like my prep was extremely hard, but like my headspace, like being depleted still, wasn't sleeping. My head wasn't there. Like I kept losing it for some reason, like with all the other stresses. Like I
Yeah.
mentioned, like I got forced to, like, I got kicked out essentially. And then I had school finals and I had military things. Like I had a lot going on. And I just felt like, one, my body wasn't responding after I ate at Thanksgiving, being like a week out. And then like the stress of not being able to do my cardio and like train, I felt like I was failing my prep and then failing my coach, and that I was going to be mad at myself for not placing so well. So I decided to quit.
Mhm.
But in reality, I think I just needed to take a day because it was literally like the next night I texted my coach like, "Hey, can I still do nationals?"
So do you think that that eating that you did, um, like that's off plan, do you think that was a like any did it cause any kind of detriment to you? Because sometimes, when you're dieting for a while and you get that refeed meal or, a little a day of like higher calories, sometimes you actually come out looking better. Or did you feel like it did kind of set you back some?
I hadn't had like a cheat meal or like a refeed since like the end or like mid September.
Mhm.
Um, and November is like a hard month for me, because my grandpa, like his birthday was that month and he's gone. He's no longer with us. So November
Mhm.
is also like a very depressing month in that sense. I get really
Sure.
in my feels and get really retrospective, or introspective. I'm sorry. I think that might be another reason like why I was just like not in a good headspace. But
Yeah.
even though I ate off plan at Thanksgiving, I don't necessarily think that it was the fact that I ate off plan. I think it was more along the lines that one, we were so sodium restricted since before October. So having all of the extra sodium at Thanksgiving, and then also pretty much eating a whole vegan peanut butter pie, did not help my case either. It was so good, let me tell you. Yeah.
That
My
that's
friend's like, you should probably stop now. I'm like,
That's so funny. I was never into like vegan desserts or vegan anything for that matter. But then around here in Nashville, Tennessee, we had this one place that was like vegan desserts, and my wife was like, "Let's go! Like it's great. I've been there." I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure." Anytime somebody says vegan to me, I'm like, I have like this natural deterrent, and just to that, and it's not that I have anything against it. It's just, I don't know, it's just a thing. And so I went there and they had the best desserts. I'm like, we've been there like every weekend since then. Like it's amazing. So when you say you ate a vegan pie, a peanut butter pie, I'm like, I can only imagine how good that was.
oh yeah, it was so good. We
Yeah.
got another one for Christmas too.
Where did you get it?
There's like a local cafe. So the person I'm staying with, she
I
owns
got you.
a cafe out here, and so she knows a lot of local bakers. So if you're in Connecticut, the cafe is Cafe Luca Bell, and there's a lot of she knows a lot of connections. So one of her friends has this bakery, and yeah, it's so good.
Got it. So I can't like just go to my local like Publix or something and pick it up. Yeah, that's too
Mm-mm.
bad. That's too bad. Mm.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. I guess I have to just deal with what we have here.
Come to
All right.
Connecticut, support local.
There. So okay, so you come in ninth, and like what I was saying before I went off on this tangent, but I mean that's first of all, bikini shows are notoriously have like the highest amount of competitors. So like
Mhm.
you're dealing with that. Then you're dealing with the stressful prep, with everything that we talked about. You're dealing like, with the quote unquote refeed or whatever you want to call it, like going off plan. So, and then you come in ninth, top 10. I mean, that's that on your second show ever. I think you've got a lot to take away from that, like a lot of wins to take away from that. I mean, sure, everybody would like to be first, but I don't think this was a total loss for you. I mean, that at least it doesn't seem that way to me.
No, absolutely. And I 100% count it as a win. Like my mentality, even when I told coaches, like, I just want to enjoy what I have. I can't ask for anything more. Like, forgive my language, but given like the shit show that I went through this year, like ninth is phenomenal. I was like,
Yeah.
I can ask for more at this point. I was going to hang the heels. Like nationals this year or last year was going to be my last show, and I was just going to give it up for a while. But I seriously had like 10 coaches and a few head judges approach me, and they're like, are you sure that you want to hang the heels? They're like, you're at your peak right now. They're like, you'll definitely get your pro card like
Mhm.
this next season. Like, just keep working. So Steve, one of the owners at Bev's Gym, like I emailed him. I also emailed Sandy for bikini. She's like the head judge.
Mhm.
Feedback was similar. Nothing I didn't already know. So I'm going to take that feedback after I get my health checked out, of course, first. So depending on what health markers look like, if we're good to go, we're going to do another season. If not, we're going to take a break. Um, so I guess a surprise for everyone.
Yeah. All right. Is that something that you were planning? Well, first of all, what was the feedback? Like, if you don't mind me asking.
So feedback from Sandy was essentially grow glutes, bring in the lower abdomen, make it tighter, which was the issue I was fighting all season after I got COVID, and even a little bit before COVID with the dissension. So digestive issues. And then from Steve, he said glutes, and then he wanted a little bit more quad sweep,
Mhm.
which was interesting, especially for bikini. I was like, okay, like I could see it like a little bit more leg definition. So this season, if I compete, we're going to maintain upper body. Personally, I would like to grow delts just a little bit more, have them a little bit
Mm,
more capped, and then grow more of the lower glute, not much of the upper glute.
yeah.
So we'll see. Um,
Yeah, the quad sweep would be interesting. Sometimes what happens is that, like, I just know personally for me, and not saying that this is what he was dealing with, but sometimes I like a certain physique, right? Like on a man or a woman, whatever that physique may look like. All divisions, counted
mhm.
out, right? And so, like, I will lean towards that type of look no matter what, like, the division is, right? And I have to take a step back and say, oh, like, this is not like what this girl's division is looking for, or this is like not what this guy's division is looking for. They're looking for something different, even though I personally it might be pleasing to, like, to my eyes, like, to see that, and so, like, sometimes I fall into that trap. So maybe there's some of that. But with bikini, everything changes so fast too. Like, you have so many, just judge, like, if you're going to the highest level, right? You'll have so many, like, different Olympia champions in a short period of time, and some of them don't look, too similar. So you never know, like, what look they're going to be wanting any particular year.
True. I think Tyler Mannion said it best. Last year he had a post about like what, because this comes up often in bikini, and this is one of my I guess dislikes with the division, because there
Mhm.
hasn't been like a repeat Olympia winner. So it's like, how do we know for sure? Like, what do you want? But Tyler Mannion said, if you want to know what we're looking for in the divisions, just look at the Olympians. And I'm not going to knock this Olympia. I mean, I passed out like right before they announced the winner. And then I woke up, and then, like, next thing I know, Hadid's winning. I'm just like, who won bikini?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
um, but I would suggest like looking at like the top 5 winners of that division, because you can get a commonality of what they're looking for. Like
Mhm.
between Jen and Maureen, like they look different. And
Right,
Jen was the winner last season. So it's like, okay, what do you want? Like the more softer look, or do you want the harder look?
right.
Right. So it's like, what are the commonalities of each of these girls that are in the top 5? And then put that together. And that's the package that you need to bring to stage.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. I definitely think that's a good way of looking at it, because it's hard to nail it, like, exactly right, because it's so, like, volatile. So, like you said, just taking the top 5 and seeing what, like, why are they in the top 5 as a whole, and then, modeling your physique towards that, because that's kind of like what they're looking for. Have you always wanted to compete in bikini, or have you ever thought of doing anything else?
I've always wanted to do bikini. I will not do any other division. I'm pretty small, and I feel like I have a pretty petite frame.
Mhm.
Also, just like with what I'm looking for with my own body, like I've been very active my off season. Everyone thinks I'm wellness or figure. I'm just, because women, we hold more fat in our legs and our lower body. Um, but I don't want larger legs. I like being more, thin and petite. I like that look on me. So
Right.
I don't think I would ever switch divisions.
Do you I know we talked a little bit about it, and as you said, you kind of fell asleep, and then woke up and saw the men's champ. But is there anything that, like, sticks out with this last Olympia, whether it's in your division, in bikini? I know you just mentioned wellness, or like maybe even some of the men's division. Any like points you remember that you thought while you were watching it?
I mean, I had a lot of friends and people that I supported in the Olympia. There was
Mhm.
Alison Tetsu, who's from France. She was like my go-to for like my underdog vote. Like I knew she wasn't gonna be top 5, but she has a great package. I think she'll have a lot to offer to the Olympia. There's also Sierra. Her and I used to be on the same team as well
Mhm.
with Team Pro Ops. So it was like nice to see her. I think what was very interesting with this Olympia is it was apparently on carpet this year. So seeing like the differences of like people posing and how the Olympians were even struggling with their routines on stage was interesting. Because I know when I was at nationals, I had a leg cramp and I kind of stumbled while I was performing. So
Hmm.
I was like, oh, well, we have that commonality, but like I'm not a pro. I'm also not an Olympian. So I mean, to see them stumble and like come out of it with grace, I think is something that everyone can take note of.
Right.
Um, if you're competing in heels, because obviously everybody else that's barefoot and has that luxury.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's definitely adds another layer when you're in heels. But also, I mean, with being like sodium depleted, dehydrated, you can get cramps. That sometimes does happen and, can cause problems,
Mhm.
but the worst decision ever to put carpet down for the Olympia. I think that was a terrible decision, and no worse do you see it than the girls who compete in shoes or heels, because I'm pretty sure majority of them stumbled in one way or another. It's hard transitioning. Not that I'm an expert on the female divisions, but just by looking, it's hard. You can tell it's very hard to transition fluidly in heels when you have like that rough textured carpet. I believe even Fran, who won the wellness Olympia, stumbled too. And
Mhm.
so, and I know many others did. I just can't remember who now, but I saw it first and then I was like, "Ooh, that's terrible." And then I saw it again and again and I'm like, "Wait a minute. There's way too many people stumbling for this to be like, a coincidence." So, yeah, I think they really need to get rid of that next year. That's not a good decision. So,
I think a takeaway from that, though, for any competitor that has to compete in heels, so like bikini, figure, wellness, practice posing in all like floors. So carpet,
mhm,
linoleum, sticky floors, asphalt, because you never know what's going to be brought to you.
right.
If you can perfect it on those floors, you'll be able to perfect it no matter what is thrown to you on show day.
Sure. Yeah. No, definitely. I definitely agree with that because it's like you got to control what you can control. Like you can't control what the texture of the floor is going to be, but if you can be at least prepared to deal with several of them, then that will definitely give you a benefit, compared to someone who isn't. You did mention that you were going to look into your health values. Was this something that you just decided that you're going to do every season, or is this prompted by some concerns?
I'm I'm gonna make a note first that like if you're a competitor, you should get your health looked at like before, during, and after competing. Um, but the big push right now for me is because I have some issues that came up during the season and before I continue doing another season. In order for me to be competitive in my own mind and just for my
Hmm.
health markers, I need to get this stuff looked at.
Yeah.
Um, because like one of the feedback that Sandy said was to get my lower abdomen fixed, which was digestion. I had issues with digestion since October,
Hmm.
and probably even before that. So I need to get that looked at. Digestion is a huge aspect when it comes to, one bowel movements, absorbing your micronutrients that you need for good body functioning, as well as your macros. So that way you're using that energy how you should be, especially when you get so depleted.
Right.
Like I study like nutrition. I actually my major's in psychology, so like
Hmm.
brain function is huge for me. In order for your brain to function well, you're supposed to have at least 80 micrograms or grams of fats. That's the
Hmm.
RDA, at least for females. And this is an extreme sport, so obviously we're not having that. At least most of us women aren't, especially at the amateur level. So how do you combat that so that way you can be better the next time, right?
Right.
So do everything in your power that you can control to make sure that you're maximizing what you are given.
Right. I think that's a good point to make. One, always check your health. If you have something wrong, get it fixed, get it taken care of before pushing the envelope anymore. Um, I think also it's a good point to make that high elite level athletes, like people, so let me put it this way. People say that bodybuilding is unhealthy, and there's some truth to that. But high level athletics is unhealthy in every sport. Like, for example, it's healthy to jog, but it's unhealthy to be a professional runner. Your knees are going to get, you know, crushed over time. Like all you're going to have all kinds of hip problems and this kind of issue and that kind of issue. Same goes for every sport, football, soccer, whatever you want to you point to. High level athletics is always has some in kind of innate dangers in it. So
Mhm.
again, health is like extremely important. The difference between, you know, bodybuilding and other sports is that you have to live in that body for 24/7, right? So it's like even after the sport is over and you don't compete, you're still living in that body. So you definitely want to make sure that you treat it right. And so it sounds like you're, doing the right thing there. So
Absolutely. I know way too many people, particularly males, who have now lost like functionalities that they have to live, like the repercussions for the rest of their life. Like
mhm.
the sport's not safe in some aspects. And if you don't keep up with the health, then I mean, you're gonna have to live with it. Like you can become
Yeah,
infertile on this sport,
yeah.
like and other things as well.
True.
So
No, very true. Very true. I think that's important to know. And I think you have to be kind of adult about it and understand it and not. Sometimes you see people and they take like very polarizing, like views of one way or another. But I think it's everyone is an adult and you should do your due diligence, before getting into the sport or continuing with the sport, especially if you find out that you need to take some time. So for
absolutely.
sure. So I guess no plans for like no shows that you're looking at because of that, right? Correct.
There's that. The other thing too is I have to plan around like my military duty. So I I mean, this is kind of hush hush, but I have left the coach that I was with at nationals.
Okay.
I have talked to him about it because I want to take a look at my health. Um, but like continuing on to the season, like getting a coach, I would want someone who's more in tune with the bikini division.
Mhm.
Um, so there's a coach I'm looking at that's based out of Vegas, and he's coached and trained some athletes that are
Okay.
Olympians and like pros. Like he trained with Jen Dory and Maureen and
Mhm.
Laura Lee Chapados. So I feel pretty comfortable with the decision of moving forward with the season with that coach. If we are going to do another season, which will bring a phenomenal package, I would have no doubt that I would get my pro card in the next season that I do compete in, whether that's 2023 or maybe the following year. We'll see
Mhm.
based on health markers. Um,
Well,
but who
yeah.
knows?
It sounds like you've got like a plan. You just have to check a couple of boxes before that plan like comes into, fruition. So, mm, wishing you all the best with that.
Thank you. The other thing I would like to note too, for other athletes, particularly in bikini, is when it comes to like an off season, like you should actually take an off season. Like I had tremendous growth and progress from my first show at Wasatch Warrior in April of 2021 to nationals, which December 2022. That's took like an 18-month plus off season to grow and to develop into the package that I brought in. So I know a lot of girls who are amateurs who will take like 2, 3 months and then like do back-to-back shows. Like take an off season, grow. It's okay to not be stage lean all year round. Like love your body. Yes, you'll experience body dysmorphia. Everyone does. It's part of the sport.
Right.
You get over it because once you cut it down again, like you're gonna love seeing how much you grew and how much better you became. So it's just loving every aspect.
Yeah, I think that's also extremely important. I believe like when you get to a point like a Maureen, like a Ashley Kaltwasser, once you've developed to the point where you're on the like the highest levels, placing top fives regularly, and you're not going to develop any more, you're just kind of fine tuning, you can probably do like several shows, hit several shows and compete and do well, not and kind of keep your peak for a while. But when you're an amateur and you're still progressing to that level, like those big off seasons are really important because like you said, that's where you make all the growth. If you don't if you compete too many times and you don't give your body time to grow, it's like it'll take you longer to get to that high level, you know. At least
Mhm.
that's my view of it.
Yeah,
So,
and you have to put on fat in order to build muscle. So why would you try to stay as lean as possible all year round? And I mean, bodybuilding is not cheap. It's a very expensive sport, hobby.
mhm,
So essentially, like in my own opinion, like if I didn't place well, like I'm not gonna go do another show like a month from now. I'm be like,
right.
okay, like nationals, let me tell you, like I spent probably over $2,000 at nationals
Mm,
because you have your bikini, hair. Well, I did my own hair, makeup. I had to fly there, Airbnb, car, food, like everything adds up. Registration, athlete registration, like for the NPC, like everything adds up. Like you're planning on spending a pretty penny at that level of a show. Like, why would you want to do another show if you don't place well? Like shortly after that, that makes no sense. At least to me, it doesn't make sense.
right. Yeah,
I'm gonna
you
take
want
that. Go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go ahead, go ahead.
Like, I would want to take that feedback, utilize it, grow, and then show up at another competition that's at the same level and see if I improved.
Right.
That's the whole point of an improvement season.
Yeah. I mean, I think you need to make your punches count, right? Like you just don't want to like throw them out there and miss. Like you want to make sure that when you throw your punches, they hit something. And it's like like you're saying, if you're not placing well, then and there's something wrong and you need more improvement, then there's no sense in going to do another show. The only time that I think that there's a caveat to that is if it's something that you missed in your peak. Like, you know, you didn't peak right, then you can probably peak again in another show and maybe do better. But if it's an issue of development, then yeah, there's no way you're gonna make up for that in a month or a few weeks. You know, that's gonna take a long time. So for sure, for sure. You mentioned Laura Lee, and for some reason, I remember somebody saying that she was very unhappy with her placing in the Olympia. I can't remember where she placed, but they said that
She's
she,
top five, I think. Well, I think she got fifth.
okay. Yeah. See, I think most people were thinking, or at least definitely people that supported her, that she was coming in this show and she was going to either win it or she's going to be like top two, three. And then for her to place top five, I don't think she was happy with that, which I mean, understandably so. Right. But
Yes. So at the Olympia, something that I noticed, and like as they were doing comparisons, I was making my own thoughts and critiquing as
mhm,
well. Like
mhm.
I thought Laura Lee Chapados and then Janet, I can't pronounce her name correctly, so I'm not going to butcher it.
Is it like
Um,
Layla or something like that? Is that
yes,
her? Okay.
I
Yeah.
feel like their glutes were too big,
Mm,
like almost to the sense where they could have been wellness, not like their legs were not wellness, but like their glutes were much larger in relation to all of the other girls. Like when you looked
yeah.
at their back shots, they were just like, I felt like their glutes were this big and then everybody else's was like this big.
I see. Yeah. No, that will definitely bring you down. That's for sure. In bikini, especially when that's like the one of the major things that you get judged on, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
Rough.
mean, they had great physiques. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not saying that their physiques were not there, but I mean, I did competitive cheerleading as well. So I'm used to like finding something that like doesn't belong.
Hmm.
And to me, that was something that didn't fit the criteria. I was just like, their glutes are really long, they're really big, very beautiful. And, you know,
Right.
who doesn't want a dump truck like Laura Lee Chapados? Okay. Girls got glutes. Um,
Do you think that's like a genetic thing, or you think that's just some like is that something that you can, and I'm totally out of the loop on this, but is that something that you can like even correct, you know?
like making them smaller. I've seen some of Lorley's transformations. I think it was like 2 years ago. Like her glutes were a lot smaller, and then like 2 years ago, or like last season, not 2022, but 2021.
Mhm.
She came back in, and that's when everybody was like so starstruck because she grew her glutes so much. So it's
Mm.
definitely something that if you put in the time, effort, and energy, you can definitely grow and develop. I do think other people are more genetically gifted than
Mhm.
others for sure. But if it's something that you want, I'm 100% sure that you can attain it.
Yeah, it's funny because like I know on the men's side sometimes the Olympia is judged a little bit different than the other shows. And so like you'll have a different kind of structure or physique win in the Olympia as opposed to other shows. And so like for men, they'll say things like the Olympia is like a mass monster show. So it's like the biggest guy will win, even if that guy doesn't necessarily have like the prettiest physique. And so
Mhm.
I don't know if maybe like every division is like that, and they're looking for a particular look at the Olympia as opposed to like the Arnold or something else. Maybe there's something to do with that as well. I don't know.
I think with that, it depends on like what the show is.
Right.
Like it's very, a lot of us competitors will talk like local shows. Like, why would you want to do a local show, right? Unless like it's your first time competing,
Mhm.
because 9 times out of 10, like I've had friends that have competed at a local show that are toned and like they fit the criteria. I mean, sure, like they'll need some improvement in some way, some shape or form. But like with bikini particularly, they'll pick and place all of the soft girls, and then someone who's actually defined and like actually fits the criteria. You can see cap shoulders, you can see the tie-ins. Like they won't place at all. Like why is someone who is trying to match the criteria from Olympia not placing, whereas these other girls who are very soft and they don't have cap shoulders, they like you can't see any definition, why are they placing?
Do you
So
do you think this is like a lack of understanding by the judges? You think this is like subpar judging is the issue here?
I would not necessarily say it's subpar
Hmm.
judging. I'm not a judge, so I wouldn't necessarily say that it's one thing or another.
Hmm.
Some competitors and I have discussed that maybe it's because you have one person that like is really fits the criteria and then everybody else doesn't. So
So
why
they're
would
like
you
an outlier. Yeah.
right? So why would you place the outlier and you would just pick everybody else?
Yeah,
So
I could see that. I could see that happening too. Yeah, it's almost like you're too good for your own good. Yeah.
which
Mm,
also isn't fair
right.
for the competitor standpoint. So it's just like, okay, I just trained and, prepped for the show and I'm hitting all these buckets. Like, how can I improve? Like, I
Mhm.
have like cap delts, I have tie ins,
Right.
but everybody else that plays like is soft.
Yeah.
So that's where it's confusing and it's like a mental game for competitors at local shows. That's why I'm
Right.
saying, like, if you're a competitor, you really have to choose wisely kind of which shows that you want to compete at. If
Sure.
you're at a national level show, then you should be competing at like shows.
Yeah, which is probably while you have certain shows that have like a bazillion competitors, and then other shows have like two. You know.
Mhm.
But I don't know if that would be a problem in bikini ever. Like, is that ever an issue in bikini? Like, not having enough competitors? It seems like they always
No,
have a lot of competitors.
always.
Yeah,
But I think it just depends on what class you're in, height class. I think
sure.
the taller you get, at some shows, there's less competitors.
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, yeah, that's the interesting thing about about amateurs as opposed to like pros. It's like amateurs divided by height, but it's like once you go pro, it's like everybody just gets thrown into the mix. So you
Mhm.
just strictly win on your physique. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, anyways, I don't want to take up any more of your time. We've been talking for quite a while, but I really enjoyed it. Casey, if anybody wanted to like reach out to you for more podcasts or kind of pick your brain about the sport, anything else, what would be the best way for them to do that?
They can find me on my Instagram, which is at Casey underscore fit, and that's with three E's and three Y's for Casey.
Got it. And guys, I'm going to link everything at the bottom here, so it'd be easy for you to reach out to Casey if you want to do so. And again, thank you so much for your time. You enjoy your evening.
Absolutely, you as well. And
All
thank
right.
you so much for inviting me and having this discussion. It's been great.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye.
All right.